Hello and welcome to the F1 News Zone, the show we round up all the biggest stories in Formula 1 right now. We are currently in the Mexico City Grand Prix weekend, but which stories have been making the headlines this week? This week, McLaren has confirmed that the consequences for Lando Norris have been removed for this weekend's Mexican Grand Prix. Oscar Piastri has stated he's feeling cool under the title pressure, and we bring you all of the highlights and action from qualifying around the Hermanos Rodriguez circuit for the 2025 Mexican Grand Prix. If you're watching on YouTube, skip to the timestamp in the video description below to watch the story that you're most interested in. So, without further delay, vamos, let's get into this. So last week, ahead of the United States Grand Prix, we talked about consequences. Those fabled consequences after the incident between the two McLaren drivers at the Singapore Grand Prix a good 3 weeks ago. Now, there were consequences heading into that round, but we didn't see anything that happened off the back of those consequences. Obviously, the two McLaren drivers were crashed out at the start of the sprint race, and then during the Grand Prix race, Norris and Piastri were never close to each other at any point, so we didn't see what those consequences were going to be. But now, whatever consequences were there are gone, according to Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. So the consequences that we thought were going to be there have never been acted upon, but even though they were there, they're now gone. So nothing changes? I don't know. Anyway, let's have a look at this on the F1Chronicle.com. Whoever says that Formula 1's confusing, guys, it's totally straightforward. Totally straightforward. What are we talking about? Let's have a look at this, though, on the F1Chronicle.com. McLaren have cleared the internal penalties previously imposed on Lando Norris after Oscar Piastri accepted partial responsibility for their collision during the Austin sprint, resetting the dynamic between the title-contending teammates ahead of this weekend's Mexico City Grand Prix. The decision effectively cancels out the consequences. So I'm going to stop saying that, I'm sorry. Handed to both drivers following separate on-track clashes over the past two race weekends. Norris had entered the USGP weekend carrying what McLaren described as marginal sporting consequences after being found at fault for the pair's wheel-banging incident at the start of the Singapore Grand Prix. While the team never specified the exact nature of the sanction, it was widely believed to be involving Piastri receiving priority in certain strategic or qualifying decisions. Norris himself suggested the measure would affect him for the rest of the season. But as it turns out, no. However, the situation shifted dramatically in Austin, as did Oscar Piastri's car as it was flying towards Lando Norris after Nico Hülkenberg hit him. Not blaming Hulk, just saying that was a fact he did. It was a factual retelling of the events, as Ferrari would say. During the sprint race, Piastri made contact with Sauber's Nico Hülkenberg at turn 1, triggering a chain reaction that eliminated both McLarens from the race. Following a detailed post-event review, McLaren concluded that Piastri bore a degree of responsibility for the incident, prompting the team to remove Norris's earlier penalty and officially declare both drivers back on equal footing. And Piastri confirmed this in a recent interview ahead of the Mexico City Grand Prix, saying, quote, "The consequences on Lando's side have been removed. We've gone through it again, we go through it every weekend regardless of what's happened. I think there's a degree of responsibility from my side in the sprint, and we are starting this weekend with a clean slate for both of us. Just going out and racing to see who can come out on top. It's going to be Max Verstappen." End quote. It's going to be Max Verstappen, isn't it, this weekend? It's not going to be either for these two guys, I'll be honest, but hey, stranger things have happened. Norris echoed this sentiment as well, saying, quote, "Like we said, we'd had discussions after the weekend about what happened. Going forward, it's still us as a team versus everyone else, of course. Still versus each other, but we're in a good place." End quote. And to be honest, guys, I really do think that they should have just left all this, I don't think there should be these consequences, these penalties within the team. It's just adding a bit of uncertainty to things, really. I mean, you might not agree with what the stewards did at the Singapore Grand Prix, you might not agree with what they did at the USGP sprint either, but the fact remains is that I think they should just be allowed to fight, unless there's something that's overly obviously, Lando Norris T-boning Oscar Piastri or something like that, which I don't expect to happen, but I'm just saying, unless it's something incredibly obvious like that, where, let's be honest again, the stewards would get involved if it was that bad, obviously, they wouldn't just let that slide. I criticise the F1 stewards a lot, but I don't think they'd let that one slide at all. I think they should just let him get on with it. They have clinched the Constructors' Championship already, so just let him get on with it. Just let him get on with it. Don't let him think about stuff like this, because in the end, we're seeing 2007 repeat itself. Two great drivers for McLaren, and neither of them, and it's entirely possible that neither will win the championship. It's possible now, you know? Somehow, it is, but there we go. But yeah, your thoughts in the comments below, guys. Is it right that McLaren have removed these penalties? Should they have even been there in the first place? I would say they probably shouldn't have been, but I want to hear what you have to say. Things have not been going too well for our championship leader in the last few rounds of the championship, especially during the United States Grand Prix, where his lead was reduced not only between himself and his teammate Lando Norris, but also between himself and Max Verstappen. I'm of course talking about Oscar Piastri. He is under pressure. He was labelled as the Iceman, you know, Prost version 2 in Formula 1 in 2025, but is he feeling the pressure? Is he caving under the pressure at last? Because this is the first time he's been in a championship fight, and this is the first time really that this championship fight this season, in these last few 4 races or so, really, ever since he won his most recent Grand Prix, the Dutch Grand Prix, it's really fallen away from him. But can he recover from it? Will he recover from it? Will he still win the title? A lot of questions still to answer, guys, but let's go through what they've been saying about this on the F1Chronicle.com as always for you. Oscar Piastri insists that he's keeping his cool mind amid mounting pressure from Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, drawing on his proven record in high-stakes championship fights as the 2025 Formula 1 season enters its decisive phase. The United States Grand Prix proved a challenging weekend for the McLaren driver after crashing out on the opening lap of the sprint race during a difficult qualifying session and then finishing 5th in the main event on Sunday. Piastri left Austin with just 10 championship points. In contrast, Verstappen delivered a flawless performance, sweeping both the sprint and the Grand Prix to collect maximum points and reignite his title challenge. Indeed, he almost got a Grand Slam again. It was just the fastest lap that he was missing. After 19 rounds, Piastri is still in the lead of the championship, holding a 14-point advantage over teammate Lando Norris and a 40-point buffer over Verstappen. But the reigning world champion's recent surge, including 3 Grand Prix victories in the last 4 rounds, has dramatically tightened the contest with 5 races remaining. There's 2 sprint races there as well, so there's more chances to earn points for Verstappen. Piastri's recent form tells the story of a title fight swinging back towards his rivals. Over the last 4 rounds, the Australian has scored 37 points compared to 57 for Norris and 101 for Verstappen. Jesus. A combination of car performance mismatches in Monza and an incident-filled weekend in both Azerbaijan and Austin has chipped away at his once comfortable lead. Still though, the 24-year-old remains composed and confident, saying, quote, "I've been in fights that were as close or even closer than what they are now. I've got the evidence for myself that things can still turn out well, and I still fully believe that I can win the World Championship. This weekend has obviously been tough," referring to Austin, "and the gap has come down a little bit in the last few weekends. A little bit. It's been slashed, mate. That's gone down massively. But performance is what's going to win you a championship, not just looking for points. The faster you go, the more points you are going to score." End quote. With the greatest of respect to Formula 2 and Formula 3, I don't think he's faced a rival like this before in the form of Max Verstappen, you know. He's faced good drivers in those championships and did incredibly well to win both of them in back-to-back seasons, you know. Piastri's rise has been sensational, but he's never come up against an opponent like this before. I'd argue even Lando Norris is, you know, he's well above the levels of the competition he would have faced before, although of course he is more experienced at facing Lando Norris. He's faced him for the last 3 seasons in a row in Formula 1. You can't go comparing even the best drivers in F2 to a 4-time world champion, maybe the GOAT in Formula 1, Max Verstappen. It's not really a good comparison. But I suppose you've got to take the positives wherever you can, haven't you? Piastri is no stranger to title pressure. And on that difficulty as well, McLaren's one Achilles heel throughout this entire season has been qualifying. Even when they were regularly getting 1-2 finishes during the Grand Prix, they weren't always getting pole position. Their advantage over one lap has never been that great throughout this season. I think only the Spanish Grand Prix did they get a big margin. Now though, in qualifying, they're going even worse than what they were before. Piastri was qualifying all the way down in P6 in Austin, and with the pace of the car right now, that's kind of where they are. But can they rectify it for Mexico this weekend? Well, before the race, he said, quote, "I think in race trim, we still look pretty good, but in qualifying trim, it's been a little tougher for us the last few weekends. This weekend, for whatever reason, I just haven't gelled well with the car at all. The only thing you can do is analyze it and see what you can do better." End quote. With 5 races left, the championship remains wide open. Piastri's focus now shifts to the Mexican Grand Prix this weekend, where he'll look to rediscover his early season form. Can he do it? Yeah, of course he can. Will he do it? Well, this weekend I think is going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be really tough for him because Max Verstappen is very good around Mexico. He has the most wins in the Mexican Grand Prix ever. He's in great form. That Red Bull looks pretty good, even in Yuki Tsunoda's hands right now. So, very much an uphill battle for him. Can he overcome it over the rest of the season? I think probably still one of the McLarens is going to win the championship, but I've gone from writing Max Verstappen off after the Spanish Grand Prix to potentially eating my words later this year in December. It could happen. You know, with the way he's going right now, if he keeps this momentum going, we know he's a monster. We know he's a world champion 4 times. Can it be 5 this year? Who knows? And of course, you got to look at Lando Norris too. I think it's more likely Lando Norris will take that title off of him, but we'll have to wait and see. It's sure to be spicy in Mexico this weekend. I can't wait. It's not uncommon for Formula 1 teams to run a driver in free practice that doesn't complete the rest of the weekend. These are typically young drivers, development drivers, but in some cases these could be relatively experienced ones. We're going to see 9 of them though for free practice 1 in the Mexico City Grand Prix this weekend, which might well be a record. So who are these guys? Which teams are they running for? And why are so many teams choosing to make these changes? I got everything you need to know here on the channel as always, guys. So the only team that is not running a free practice driver in FP1 is Sauber. They have already done enough to complete their allocation, as it were, when it comes to these Friday free practice drivers. More on that after I go through the list of drivers you can expect to see. Some familiar names here, some very familiar names if you are familiar with other racing series as well. And I think all of them have run at least one free practice session or done a young drivers test at some point in the recent past. So Red Bull Racing will be running Arvid Lindblad. You'll know him from Formula 2. He was even mooted to potentially replace someone like Liam Lawson partway through this year, but he's getting an FP1 run out this weekend in Mexico. Pato O'Ward, one of the local drivers, he will get a run out in the McLaren, which is pretty customary for him at this point. He always seems to get a run out in Mexico in his home Grand Prix. Anthony Fuoco, the Le Mans winner, he will be getting a run out for Ferrari. I swear he's been a young driver for Ferrari for like 15 years at this point, but hey, it still counts since he's never had a Grand Prix start. Frederic Vesti will get another run out in the Mercedes. Luke Browning will get a chance in the Williams. Jack Crawford, again someone you'll be familiar with if you follow Formula 2, he will be driving the Aston Martin. Paul Aaron will be in the Alpine again. Ayumu Iwasa will be in the Racing Bulls. He's done tests for Red Bull and Racing Bulls at this point. Good to see him getting another chance. And Ryo Harikawa, the guy that has been given so many opportunities for so many different teams, he will once again be running in the Haas. So you might be wondering, why are so many teams choosing to do it this weekend? Well, I think there's a few reasons for that. Essentially, when it comes to these young drivers, they don't actually have to be that young. The likes of Pato O'Ward, he's a very experienced IndyCar driver. Ryo Harikawa, he is not young. Fuoco, like I mentioned before, he's a Le Mans winner. There are some genuine young drivers here, like Arvid Lindblad. I think he's only 18 years of age, but it refers to their experience in Grand Prix. They have to be below a certain amount of Grand Prix competed in to be classed as a young driver. It's completely irrelevant of age. That is why Fernando Alonso was classed as a young driver at the Young Drivers Test in Abu Dhabi before making his comeback for Alpine, because he hadn't competed in Formula 1 for 2 seasons, so he was still classified as a young driver despite almost being 40 years of age. None of these guys have ever competed during a Grand Prix, so they all qualify for that. Now, Sauber are the only team who have already completed that allocation of young driver days. Effectively, what this means is that every team at some point during this year has to run a young driver at 4 Grand Prix in their free practices. Now, technically, this can class as a rookie. So the likes of Isaac Hadjar at Racing Bulls, Ollie Behrman at Haas, those guys actually counted as a young driver for those events in FP1. So all those teams that have a young driver, they do actually count towards this. Franco Colapinto at Alpine, though, he didn't count because he went over the limit of actual allocated races to still be classed as a young driver. He passed that while he was at Williams last season. Sauber managed to do theirs thanks to Gabriel Bortoleto in the first 2 rounds of the season, and also Paul Aaron, who got runs out at Silverstone and the Hungaroring, so they've already done their allocation. This, I believe, for every single other team is their 4th and final one, but the question still remains, why Mexico? I think the reason why potentially is the fact that it's so late in the season. So there is less chance that they will have to draft in one of these rookies anyway to replace one of their drivers if they were to get a ban, if they were to be injured or something like that. You know, they could get around the rules that way effectively. But the chance of that happening in the final 4 rounds after this race are very low. Mexico as well on top of that. It is a full weekend. It's not a sprint weekend. Obviously, Brazil and Qatar are sprint weekends. The Las Vegas Grand Prix after that, that's only 2 days of running. That's reduced running. And then leaving it to the very final round in Abu Dhabi. I mean, they could do it, I suppose, but they do have their young drivers test after that, so they're going to get experience of that track anyway. So it is more beneficial to go somewhere like Mexico for this. It's also a big challenge as well, so that's probably part of it. You know, throwing in the deep end, you've got the high altitude, the high temperatures. It's a very difficult circuit, is Mexico, so it's probably quite a difficult test for a lot of these more it's probably more of a challenge for the more inexperienced drivers. But yeah, there you go, guys. That is all the drivers that are running in free practice that you don't normally see. 9 of them. That'll be on later today. I think it starts at 7:30 p.m. UK time. I think that would be 1:30 in the afternoon over in Mexico. But the clocks are going back this weekend in the UK, so it's all going to be confused anyway, so it is what it is. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below, guys. I think this is a good rule. I think it varies a little, because otherwise free practice is, let's be honest, it's really dull. It's really dull. There's not a lot going on, is there? Despite it now being Monday, we are still getting penalties handed out after the United States Grand Prix, and it has been confirmed that Carlos Sainz has received a 5-place grid penalty for the contact he made with Kimi Antonelli during the USGP on Sunday. But why did he receive this penalty, and was this a fair judgment by the stewards, and why on earth have we had to wait so long for this to come out? This has literally just been confirmed today, Monday early afternoon here in the UK. Like, shouldn't they have been able to finish this up before the end of the day at COTA? I don't know. This is what the stewards do sometimes. Why has this taken so long? Well, I'm not really sure why this has taken so long, to be brutally honest with you, but let me just review this incident with you guys. I'll do a bit of a dissection, a bit of an analysis like I did last time for the start line incident, the first corner incident for the sprint race. So check that out if you haven't already, of course, on the channel. Would appreciate that. But here is why Carlos Sainz got a penalty for this incident with Kimi Antonelli. So we are on lap. So Carlos Sainz qualified at the bottom end of the top 10. I think he started in 9th position, and he made a real habit of being able to get past drivers through the little section after the back straight, going into turn 15. In fact, he overtook Ollie Behrman earlier in the race. When we got to lap 7, though, he tried the same move on Kimi Antonelli, and it didn't quite go to plan. In fact, both of the drivers retired from the race due to this incident. Carlos Sainz tried to go down the inside, heading through turn 15 and into turn 16, and Kimi Antonelli effectively closed the door on him at that point. Now, the normal racing line to be going round this corner is to go wide and then cut in to get a better exit through turn 16, and you can go round the long right-hander turn 17, being quicker than what you would be before. However, doing that does leave you vulnerable to attack, and that is exactly what we saw Carlos Sainz try and exploit here with Kimi Antonelli. But like I said, it didn't go to plan. Effectively, he was driving into a disappearing wedge at this point. Now, the devil's advocate may well say, well, Kimi Antonelli should have left space for him, but it is not up to him to do that. It's up to Kimi Antonelli to take the racing line, and the racing line is whatever he deems it to be. There is no sudden movement here. This is a flowing move from Kimi Antonelli, and maybe he was in the blind spot as well. It's an awkward position to be in when it comes to the mirrors. Again, we spoke about these mirrors many times here on the channel. They don't really show that much. They're not that good, to be honest with you. The visibility out of Formula 1 cars, particularly to your immediate left or your immediate right, is very, very poor, and Kimi Antonelli probably didn't even see Carlos Sainz. Antonelli turns in, they make contact, Antonelli goes into the gravel, out of the race. Carlos Sainz continues down the road for a little bit. He eventually does retire with damage to his car. So that's why there was no penalty during the race, because there's no point giving Carlos Sainz a penalty during the race with this one, because he's already out. That is why they're giving him a 5-place grid penalty for the Mexican Grand Prix this weekend coming up. Do I think this is a fair penalty? Well, I can see certainly why they have given it. Because at the end of the day, Carlos Sainz, you know, he has every right to go for that move, but the thing is, he has to commit to it. He wasn't far enough alongside Kimi Antonelli to warrant winning the corner, as it were. That's the terminology they usually use with stuff like this. So I can understand why they're giving him a 5-place grid penalty. Personally, for me, I don't know why it took so long. I don't know why the stewards took like 12 hours just over to be able to figure this one out. For me, they probably should have just left it, I'll be honest. I mean, The more questionable incident is arguably the one between Tsunoda and Behrman, although I do think that no further action on the balance of things is probably the correct one there. I've mentioned that in my review for the actual race. Didn't give this incident a mention because it was so early on, but yeah, I can see why they're giving a penalty, but for me, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they just left this. I expected this to not have any consequences attached to it, but I was wrong yet again when it comes to the stewards. You cannot predict them. They are predictably unpredictable, as it were. So, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I don't like seeing penalties applied from previous races going to the next race unless it's something really, really obvious, but I want to hear what you have to say as always on this, guys, either way. The unpredictability in Mexico City Grand Prix qualifying continued on Saturday night with a surprise pole sitter and some real results that have shaken up the grid for the Grand Prix later today on Sunday. Let's have a look at the 5 main highlights, the 5 things that we learned from Mexico City Grand Prix qualifying for 2025. So, the form driver in Formula 1 right now is Max Verstappen, and also the form driver in the Mexico City Grand Prix over the last 6-7 years or so is also Max Verstappen. He has won 5 times around this track, which is an outright record. I don't think anybody else has won more than 3. It just shows how good he has been around the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez over the past decade or so. But surprisingly, it was another 5 for him today, P5. He got 5th place overall, which surprised me. That really surprised me. Free practice 2, he was looking very good. Admittedly, not quite as good in free practice 3 earlier in the day, but FP2 is a more representative running time effectively because it's on pretty much at the same time as qualifying. So if anything, that would be more important. But 5th, it's as good as he could manage. He didn't seem to make any sort of mistake. The pace was just not there in the car. Yuki Tsunoda, his teammate, didn't even make the top 10. But yeah, surprising from Verstappen. I was genuinely convinced he was going to get pole position relatively comfortably around this track, but no, he did not. But do not rule out Max Verstappen. He is not out of the fight yet for the victory. Of course, it's an extremely long run down to turn 1. He is very aggressive. He has got nothing to lose effectively at this point. You know, he's going for that championship, so he is going to make himself as awkward as possible. He is starting on the clean side of the grid as well, which will also help. So I wouldn't rule out him being 2nd or 3rd going out of turn 1, but we'll see how that all evolves. Let's talk about Carlos Sainz next. I think he was effectively best of the rest. Got P7 in his Williams, which is a great result. Unfortunately for him, he will start down in P12. He does have that 5-place grid penalty from the USGP, so just start outside the top 10, but that Williams car in his hands is looking very good. Alexander Albon didn't even make it out of Q1, so for Carlos Sainz to make it into Q3, he's really, really in a rich vein of form right now. He's doing really well in my opinion, so we'll see how he gets on. I think he's going to get some solid points for Williams in the race later today. Next up, let's talk about Oscar Piastri, a day to forget. Now, he qualified in 8th. He will start 7th because of the penalty to Carlos Sainz. He will be on the clean side of the grid. Again, just like Max Verstappen, he can make a lot of places up on the start of this Grand Prix. But he's all the way down there. Now, a lot of people might think, oh, he's bottling this, he's bottling the title, he's not performing. I do feel for him, to be honest with you here, because he was reporting power unit issues, and overall power from that engine seemed to be pretty good. I mean, he was doing 217 miles an hour. He was clocked at the end of the main straight, which is maybe not the fastest of the weekend. I don't think there's an inherent massive power issue there. It might be a little power delivery issue through some of the slower corners. I'm not too sure. But either way, he was reporting an issue, so I'm not going to go too hard on the guy for that. But yeah, P7, disappointing. Hopefully, they will fix that for the Grand Prix. In the hands of Lando Norris, that McLaren looks very quick. He got pole position by almost 3/10 of a second. Seriously impressive. You know, a lot of people, again, saying Lando Norris, he's a bottle job. He can't perform. He can't win this title. Well, he's got a commanding pole position there. And he keeps the streak going in Mexico. I think we have now had, 13 different pole sitters in the last 14 Mexican Grand Prix. The only guy to get more than one pole position in that time, going back over 30 years, because obviously we had quite a big gap between 1993 and 2015. I think those were the last Grand Prix in the old era and the first Grand Prix in the new era. We had quite a big gap there, obviously, but the only guy to do it on repeated occasions during that period was Charles Leclerc. More on him very soon. But Lando Norris, ridiculous lap. He even sounded surprised on his radio. He was like, I can't believe I've done that. I didn't know I had it in me. But he did. He absolutely did. That McLaren looked seriously fast in qualifying. Didn't look that great in practice for the most part, although I do think he got top in free practice 3. So clearly he was showing a bit more pace there. But yeah, pole position by that margin, ridiculous. But yeah, let's talk about Ferrari. Ferrari looked good. They seem to be performing. I mean, obviously, they got a victory 12 months ago here. Carlos Sainz getting the victory. They got a podium last time out of the USGP as well. Charles Leclerc's qualifying record here, I mean, it's the best out of anybody on the current grid. 2 pole positions to his name. And he got second place today, Charles Leclerc. And perhaps even more surprisingly, Lewis Hamilton got third. It's a double podium, effectively, in qualifying for Ferrari. That's the first time they've managed it this season. Lewis looks as though he's reinvigorated. The crowd really supporting him this week. And I thought this might happen with the absence of a local driver. They would fill that void effectively with Lewis Hamilton, but they've also filled it with Verstappen, and I've seen loads of things with Piastri and Norris, you know, people putting Verstappen's face on a picture of Jesus Christ and stuff like that. Which maybe is a bit strong, but he is a good driver, so I can see why they might do that. But yeah, fantastic effort from Ferrari. Only marginally ahead of George Russell in P4 and Max Verstappen, but still, P2 and P3, they've got that locked out there. Great result, best qualifying result for them as a team this season, I do believe. So they could be a threat. They could be a real threat later today. But we'll see what happens, guys. But yeah, those are the main things we learned from qualifying today. Hope we have a fantastic Mexican Grand Prix for you guys. I'll be reviewing this tomorrow on Monday. It's on too late here in the UK. You know how it is, guys. I'm busy on Sunday evenings. It's difficult for me to, to commit to these North American rounds. It's going to be a similar story for Brazil, most likely in a few weeks too. But yeah, let's hope we have a great Mexican Grand Prix. This grid certainly is setting us up for that. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you want to see more like this. And also look out for our weekly roundup show as well, F1 News Zone. That will be out shortly after this one. But yeah, see you soon, guys. Have a great time.